Hey, coach, if you've ever thought about running a membership, to charge $29, get 1,000 people in it, and sit on the beach and drink mojitos, this is the episode for you. But I'm going to give you a better way to do it. My name is Trevor. I'm the CEO of Coach Catalyst, and this is Build with the CEO, where we help turn your coaching into a real business. And today we're talking all about memberships. Now, memberships have come up more in the last 2 months than probably the previous 2 years. And maybe this is just a cycle in the industry and people are talking about it. And we're all getting back into this recurring revenue membership model that was all the rage in the early 2000s and early internet days, right? I'm going to charge 29, 39, 49, anything under 50. And I'm going to get 1,000 people in this thing and it's going to be awesome, right? And if you tried that in the early 2000s, you probably realize how it turned out. Now, this isn't that memberships are bad. It's just a really, 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 really challenging business model. And the mistake that a lot of coaches make is they run it at the wrong end of their business. And we're going to get into that today. I think memberships can work. I think they can work for a lot of businesses. I'm going to give you the game plan today on where I believe is the most strategic way to set a membership. But I've had too many questions over the last 2 months around membership. How should I run a membership? Where should I put a membership? That this episode was needed because there is a better way. There is a better model. And if you are a brand new coach, if you're just getting into the industry, although it seems like, oh, hey, I can go sell something for $19, right? And if I get, 50 people in it, right? Oh, it's going to be a great business. But most people don't have the audience or the reach to be able to sustain a membership on the front end of their business. Now, if you come to me and you say, hey, I got 1 million Instagram followers, or hey, I have 10,000 people on my email list. Yeah, we can maybe make this thing work. We can make the numbers work because it is a numbers game. The problem you're going to run into with all memberships is churn. People will stop. They will stop very quickly. They'll hang out for a month, maybe two, and then they're gone. And so you need to constantly be able to fill the top of the funnel. You need to sell memberships. And so if you have that kind of reach, if you have that kind of audience, if you have that skill around paid advertising where you can acquire customers less than it costs you to keep or less than what you make keeping a customer, then by all means, go about it. But the vast majority of coaches, where they're at in their journey, membership sounds sexy, but they die a quick death because we can't make the numbers work. Now, there's a much, 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 much better way to do memberships. And that's what we're talking about in today's episode. So the first mistake that most coaches make right away is that they try to sell the membership first. They try to make that the core offer. Yeah, it's low ticket. It's an easy yes. Sign up and I'll help you, right? But people don't take action when they pay $19 a month, and so then they're not using it, and it's expensive enough where at some point I'm going to see it on the credit card, and then I'm going to cancel out, and it's going to be hard to fill it. And ultimately, as a coach, you don't feel great about your work because you're not actually getting people to make the changes that they need to make. So we're going to have a big reframe today, and we're going to think about the membership not on the front end or not as a core business strategy, a core offering. We're going to think about it on the back end. So it's going to be a continuity play after your main offer, right? When the client graduates from your main offer, then we're going to move them into the membership, the continuity, and we're going to increase what we call the ARPU. So today, we're going to go through a bunch of different things. First, I'm going to talk about a couple different ways that you can run this membership, that you can run this continuity play. I'm going to give you a couple different forms on how you can execute it. We're going to look at some pricing, that kind of stuff. I'm going to give you a formula around pricing. And then we're going to CEO your business, right? We're going to look at the numbers. We're going to look at things like ARPU, MRR, CAC, and make sure that the numbers make sense. Because most coaches, if you are running some sort of signature program, that's the end. There is a graduation moment, right? Someone graduates from your program. They can no longer like, and you don't necessarily have anything else to offer them unless you keep making the program longer, right? When that really kills our revenue for our business because that person may need some help, right? We just don't have anything concrete to give them afterwards, right? This is definitely the biggest leak in most coaching businesses is we're just selling, right? And throughout today's episode, I'm going to kind of carry a story, not necessarily a story, but I'm going to carry a hypothetical coach, right? Because I want to put actual numbers to this. Because when you have numbers, you can see this in its reality. You'll see how powerful this can be. Okay. But all of this stems from your core offer, right? If we don't know who we're serving, the problem that we're solving, and we don't have a solution to that problem, which is your core offer, right? None of this really matters. We have tons of episodes on that. Go listen to another episode and go get that piece figured out. All right. Once we are solving real problems for real people, they're getting real results. Then we start implementing the membership model, the continuity model, and we start to build a real business because it creates what we call MRR. And I'll get to these numbers and what they are in the end, but basically monthly recurring revenue. Once we know that we have X amount of money coming in every month, it provides a level of like safety and clarity in the business that allows you to make really, really, really good decisions. So I'm going to take Coach Jordan, and this is a hypothetical coach. Throughout this episode, we're going to bring him in, and I'll just give you the context for Coach Jordan. Okay. Coach Jordan has about 20 active clients, right? They have their offer is $3K for 6 months. Okay. So $500 a month type of offer, right? They get about 24 graduates or clients per year, like 2 a month. So none of these are unrealistic numbers, right? 2 a month, 24 grads a year. Only about 3 of those grads right now are coming back. So a little over 10% may come back. They need to do the program again, that kind of thing. And then the other 21, they're just going to kind of drift away, right? And essentially that's about $22,000, right, per year that are just walking away, right? And here's the thing. You likely paid something to acquire these customers. And most people think of paid as just money. But early on, you probably don't have a lot of money, which is okay. That's how everybody starts, right? We're not all going and getting investors in the coaching industry, right? You're starting with time. So the value that you give is time early on, right? You're giving up time because that's what you have the most of, right? Maybe you're coming over from another career and you do have some money stocked away that you can use as startup capital to get this thing going. Cool. You have a little bit of money, but you also have a lot of time because you just quit that other thing or you're not doing as much of that other thing and you're dedicating more to this. So the value you're giving is time. So we're giving value of some sort, right? So it costs you value, either money or time to acquire a customer, right? That's just the reality of things. Eventually, we want to acquire customers through monetary means and in a profitable way where we're acquiring a customer for much less than what the lifetime value of that customer is to our business, right? And those are just the numbers piece that we're going to get into here at some point. And the other thing that I want you to think about a continuity in this membership is it is continuity. It's a continuation from your core offer, your main offer. It is not a downsell. It is not an upsell, right? It is not a cross sell. It is not a insert whatever verb you want here, sell, right? It is the continuity from your main program. We're just going to be delivering it and potentially a lower touch, higher volume type of format, which is ultimately going to make it less expensive for the customer. And I'll give you the exact kind of like ratios and things to think about with that piece. But a graduation moment does exist inside of your business. That's the thing I want to get out right now. There is a moment when the thing ends. And I'll bring in our Project Orange that we're rolling at our facilities as well to give you some ideas like how this works there as well, to give you concrete examples. But there is a graduation moment, right? And if it's not engineered, if it's not designed, that customer just drops off. And then the lifetime value of that customer is whatever it costs or whatever they paid us for that program. Maybe it was the $2,000, the $3,000, whatever to accomplish that thing. So my job, my goal is to help you understand how do we increase the LTV, the lifetime value of that client by creating this membership and continuity on the back end, not on the front end. And I want to talk about one other thing on why the back end works better than the front end, because I've had a couple coaches that I've talked this through. So I think I have some uh, fairly coherent thoughts on this one. So if I bring a client into a really low ticket front end offer, right, and it's a membership type of thing, right, that client is going to be just the same amount of work as if I bring someone into a high ticket, right? They're going to ask a lot of questions. I probably am not going to provide the same value from my end because it's a $19 a month type of thing. Or maybe I just have some generic onboarding that they come into. And so the client's probably going to have a lot of questions, right? They're going to take up a lot of time. And I don't know if this is an actual law, but I've seen it consistent across different businesses that I've been involved in, is the clients that pay you the least are the ones that are the most, that give you the most problems, right? In a very PC way to talk about it. And so it takes about the same amount of effort, maybe more effort, right? And so if we move them into our core program first, that gives us 12 weeks, 16 weeks, 20 weeks, 24 weeks, whatever, to basically indoctrinate them into your coaching. They get to see you as their coach, their mentor, their guide, and you're going to guide them through their program. You're going to help them achieve their goal over the course of that time frame. They're going to trust you. They're hopefully going to like you. And now we've indoctrinated them into our coaching. And then when we move them into our continuity model, our membership model afterwards, they're already indoctrinated into our coaching. They already know how to be a good client. And so moving them into this lower touch type of offering, you have way less churn. They already know how to be a good client. They like you, they trust you, they want to stay in your world. And so we can build this continuity back end by driving people through our main program. And then they stay longer, right? They stay longer. Their LTV increases, the monthly recurring revenue for our business increases. And it creates this really cool flywheel inside of our business that allows us to build a real business. And this doesn't care about online, offline, any of that stuff, right? It works in both places. So there are two real continuity plays here. There's two ways to think about this. And when I say plays, I mean, like, how are we going to structure this thing? And really there's three, but the third one isn't really a play. It's just kind of what happens, right? All right. So we got two plays here. So the first one is the maintenance play, right? So let's say you run maybe a longer program, a 6-month program, where someone is achieving a really big transformation inside of those 6 months. Okay. Big transformation inside of those 6 months. They hit that transformation inside of those 6 months. And now they need a little bit of accountability. They need a little bit of a plan. Maybe they want workouts for the gym, right? Whatever those deliverables are, that becomes our continuity play. Maybe you move, instead of like one-on-one calls, a weekly group call, or a monthly group call, something like that. Like, all those details can be worked out, but it's essentially a lower touch version of your main program, right? Lower frequency, less intensity, right? But it's a very sustainable cadence. So you're holding it, right? It's a maintenance type program, right? And that's what that piece becomes. The second play is, there's many times in clients' journeys with us that they achieve one goal and then they see the next mountain in the distance and they want to go climb that mountain. Cool. We call it a recommitment ladder. So we want to then recommit into this other thing. And that's going to be the same commitment that the first commitment was, because it's going to be a higher intensity, right? Potentially a higher frequency, but we're moving into the next transformation, right? Maybe we went from body recomposition, we lost some weight, and now we want to do a powerlifting competition and we want to really build some strength, right? And this is for the client that wants the next goal, right? They don't want to just keep the results they've achieved over the 6 months. They're ready to attack the next goal. So the graduation really becomes a recommitment conversation, right? Not really a goodbye. And then the third play here, and this isn't really a play, but that's what I would call alumni, right? Where they're just like in your world. Cool. Hey, awesome. Stay on my email list, right? Still providing regular value there, but there's not a formal coaching relationship. And people will fall into that, and that's fine. We want to make sure that they're in your Growth Catalyst account, right? We're continuing to send newsletters to them, right? Maybe we have a different core offer that comes up that would make sense for them. Maybe they regress and then they need to redo our core offer again. Like, all of that happens, right? But we want to make sure that we have a system like Growth Catalyst where you are regularly communicating with them. another episode in and of itself, but email marketing for coaches who are very education based marketers. One of the best ways to uh, scale your marketing, and it's one of the only marketing. It's really one of the only marketing assets that you know. Right. Right. So the trap here, right, to talk about is we don't want to just say our continuity is a second product, just cheaper. Right. That's not what this is. We don't sell them into our core or our continuity. Right. They have to go through our core, earning the right to get into our continuity. Right. It's kind of like it's the ticket they need to buy in order to enter this piece. Because again, remember, we're indoctrinating someone in this time period so that when they move into our continuity, it's going to be a great group of people. This is your filter. This becomes your filter. And then the people that come out on the other end are going to be awesome. And that group is going to be awesome. And you're not going to have the headaches that you would have if you had it on the front end and sold it for $19 and tried to get every person and their sister into that program. Right. So let's bring Jordan back into this. Right. So Jordan's first attempt, right? She tries to do the same program. So she's like, hey, cool. We're going to do this $500 a month for 3 months. We're going to do that program. And then we're going to do the same program for $250, like a cheaper version of it. Right. And so this will increase her average revenue per user by $3,375. Not much of a lift, right? Not much of a lift. And it kind of becomes almost like free coaching. And so that would be like, hey, we're just gonna do the same program again, but we're just gonna do it cheaper. Right. And what that does is it just devalues your current program, your main program. If the client needs to do the program again, that's a recommitment to the main program and it costs the same amount. Right. And so you should be confident in your ability to deliver that value. Right. And that's what it costs. Right. If I buy something and then I buy it again, it's not always cheaper the second time because it still costs the same. Right. If we look at it as like a goods type of thing, this isn't goods, but you get the point. Right. And so let's get a little more specific on kind of what this maintenance can look like. Because I think this is the play that a lot of coaches should look at. The recommitment works well into that next kind of higher ticket thing, but most coaches are capped. They're doing their core offer as more one-to-one, right? So you're capped on the number of people that you can have going through that at any given time. And then you want to build this back end continuity, build that thing, build that thing, build that thing. And that's where the real revenue grows. And so most people aren't ready for a recommitment because they can only handle 20, 30 clients at one time, but you could potentially handle 100 inside of your continuity program, right? So let's talk about the maintenance aspect of the continuity because that's going to be a little bit more of our scalable. So this takes really kind of two major forms. One being, I think, a little higher on the execution list than the other one. So you need to pick a form that matches like how you kind of already deliver things. So form number one, right, of our maintenance program, I want to just keep the results that I've achieved. This is an interesting concept that I see a number of coaches having some success with. It's called like themed monthly. So you're going to pick a theme for that month that everybody is going to focus on, right? Maybe 1 month is sleep. Maybe 1 month is protein. Maybe 1 month is vegetables, whatever that may be, right? These different healthy habits that you want people to just be hyper aware of and work on throughout that time. And you could get fancy where you could allow people to kind of pick and choose which one they wanted to work on. Like that would work as well, right? Maybe you're providing workouts that they can do kind of very similar to deliverables that you had inside of your kind of core program, but now scaled, right? And so monthly theme, right? Maybe you do a weekly call, a monthly call, whatever makes sense for you, but it's more looking at this in like a group fashion. Everybody's kind of doing the same thing, right? We can still have lots of engagement. You can have a community, you can have all these things. You're keeping people engaged, but it's just done in a group fashion, right? So that's kind of version number one. And I think that's a little bit better. Version number two is like a lower touch group version of the main offer. So this is where we would take like our one-on-one client and maybe we would move them into a small group, right? Or we have a number of one-on-one clients that are going through and then we move them down into a small group to go into the next program. Same coach, same method, just like less intensity with it. And so this just kind of lowers your delivery hours. So this is a possibility, right? And it works depending on what your first model is. But the vast majority would probably go towards more of a themed monthly piece. And the coaches that are listening to this are likely doing some sort of lifestyle, behavior, nutrition, things like that. Another interesting take on this too is like you could bring in an expert every month that you would pay, right? Pay them to give a presentation on things that are interesting for your community, right? Maybe it's a component of menopause if you're dealing with kind of women in that 40 to 60 range, right? If you're dealing with men, maybe it's like testosterone replacement therapy. You're going to bring on one of the experts there and you're going to pay them, right? To come on and educate your community. So there's lots of ways that you can provide value to these people, but they're going to stick and they're going to stay because they've gone through your core program, right? They've gone through your core program. They trust you as their coach. You're now like an advisor to them and they want to stay in your world, right? And it's significantly less of an investment on their end than the core program would be. And so an example of this form number two that I want to give you is like from our facility, right? So how our facility works for our fat loss clients is they go through Project Orange, which is a 12-week, 3-phase program to help them basically reshape their nutrition, right? They start with a reset, right? And then they go into a rebuild, right? And then they go into reset, rebuild. Now I'm blanking on what the third one is. Refine. Refine is the third one. And so we take them through this education process where they get incredible results in 12 weeks. And they are training during this as well. We give them limited training. They're working with a coach as many times as they can inside of that program. Virtual, in person, all of that. Training's included, right? Once they get done with that, they maybe don't need the intensive nutrition coaching. Cool. So they just stick with the training. That helps them stay accountable, right? And so they move from kind of one-on-one coaching in Project Orange to now into our semi-private small group personal training model, right? So that's how they kind of move from this one-to-one to a group, right? And that's in the brick and mortar. And at our facility, we do monthly themed challenges. This month coming up here, we are just getting into the month of June is protein. So we have a habit that people can work on, right? And this is only for members of our facilities. Okay. So we have both 24-hour facilities and small group personal training facilities. Anyone can do this. If you're a member of the facility, cool. Jump on board. You don't necessarily have to be a training member to do that. And we provide education and we provide little check-ins and all of that. And so that's kind of our monthly membership to just provide more value to people that are paying for access to the gym. So when I get into percentages here in a second, ours are a little bit different in the brick and mortar world just because we have like this thing called like rent and building and utilities and all those kind of things. But you as a coach, if you're an online coach, right, you don't have a lot of that overhead. Your overhead is like growth catalyst for your front end, coach catalyst for your client experience, maybe your domain, right? A few other things, right? For less than $500, right? You have an entire setup just dialed in, ready to rock and roll. Okay. So let's talk about pricing here. All right, so we're going to talk about some pricing here, just so you have an idea on how this all breaks down, and I'll try to make this as simple as possible. The instinct from most people here is to go really, 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 really low, and I want you to just be aware of if that's your instinct, right? Hey, I want to charge $49 for my continuity program. No, not do this. We want the right people in it that you can serve at a high level. And we want people that value it, right? So an easy benchmark for a maintenance type program is about 25 to 40% of your main offer. Okay. 25 to 40%. Right. So if our main offer was, what are some easy numbers? $500 a month, right? 25% would be 125, right? 200-ish marks might be a pretty 199, 197 could be the sweet spot there, right? If we're doing a recommit type of continuity program, that's going to be like 100%. That's going to be the same price, 80 to 100% of what our main core offer is. If it is slightly different and there's less deliverables, maybe it's a little bit lower, but we're still in that main ticket type of pricing, right? If it's just like automatic, right? Where someone's like, oh yeah, no brainer, go into it. Your price is probably a little bit too low. Right? You want someone to be like, oh, okay, yeah, it's an investment, but like I'm willing to do it. Then you're at about that right price point, right? Because you want people that want to be there and you want people that are going to engage and that are getting value every month from this, right? And so let's go back to Jordan's kind of second attempt here where she decided to do a maintenance program, right? And remember, her main program was $500. Her maintenance program is then $149. She's going to theme it monthly. That's 30% of kind of the core offer benchmark, right? if she got 65% of people to roll over to it, so a higher percentage to roll over to it, and if they stay for an average of 14 months, right, her average revenue per user increases to $5,086, right? So it's a 45 lift. Same clients, same customer acquisition cost, a completely different business. Because remember, the whole goal with our continuity program is to build the lifetime value of a client. And so instead of just having that $3,000 ticket for them to go through your core program, right? They're now going to stay for another year at $149 a month, right? And so that's another $1,500 added to that, right? And so our goal is to provide so much value in that continuity program that people just never want to leave, right? They never want to leave. They want to stay there for a year, 2 years, right? And you can really build that MR. And as long as you're bringing people into your core program, like that thing is going to build and it's going to be awesome because you're going to build a really, really, really cool business. Okay. And you can do that continuity program at scale. So, last piece is numbers. We're going to talk about some numbers here. So, there's a few kind of terms that I want you to pay attention to because as your business starts to become a little bit more sophisticated, these are things that you want to be aware of. So, the first number is what we call ARPU. It's kind of a funny word, but it stands for average revenue per user. Okay. So, what one client pays you across the whole relationship, not just the first program, not just the core program. So our continuity can double or triple that for the same client, right? And so we want to be looking at ARPU. How much does someone invest with us over the course of their life with us, right? The second one from a business standpoint is what we call MRR, so monthly recurring revenue. That's the revenue that shows up every month that's on contract, good to go, right? It gives you a lot of clarity and a lot of safety to make decisions within your business. You're not starting from zero every month, right? You're building that monthly recurring revenue month over month. And much of that is built in that maintenance program. We can build this MRR. And then maybe we have some other pieces where maybe we have supplements or maybe we're doing peptides or other things like that, that we may have other revenue streams, but that all builds into this ARPU of our customer. And there's a lot of ways to do that. Right. And then the last one is customer acquisition cost. Because once we know about how much someone spends or invests inside of our business, we can then figure out how much we're willing to invest to acquire a new customer. Right. So this might be paid advertising. This might be affiliate models where we're paying someone to send us a customer. Right. There's lots of ways to do that, but everything costs time at the beginning typically, and then eventually it costs money. But understanding your customer acquisition costs gives you an idea on how much you're going to spend. So let's say a customer is worth $5,000 to you over the course of their life, right? Would you spend $1,000 to get $5,000, right? Like every day of the week, right? It's 20% acquisition cost. It's actually really good, right? Under 30, like you're doing well, really well, especially in a high margin type of business like this, right? That means you can go out and spend on ads to drive people to workshops to get a new client. And if you can get them for, let's say your number is $1,000, if you can get them for less than $1,000, you're winning. Run that play over and over and over and over again until it doesn't work anymore. But if we aren't sure what our customer acquisition cost is, right, it can take a little bit to figure out, but what are all the things involved, right, to acquire a customer? If you can figure out time, tool, ads, paid stuff, right? Those kind of things, right? Hard costs, all of that, put that all in there and we can figure it out, right? But these are the three that you want to know. ARPU, average revenue per user, right? Monthly recurring revenue, and CAC. ARPU, pretty easy to figure out. Like look at your last 10 clients that have left. How much did they spend with you? You know, current clients, how many people are on? How much are they spending right now? It's going to change a little bit as we go along, but that's okay, right? Your MRR, right? How much monthly recurring revenue are you bringing in every month? And then your customer acquisition cost, right? So we'll just kind of bring some numbers back here to Jordan. So pre and post. So remember when she started, right? Her average revenue per user was $3,000. Okay. She sold that 6-month package for $3,000, right? Her MRR, her monthly recurring revenue was really zero, right? Because she was selling a package. And if she collected all of that up front, that's not recurring. That's just a lump sum, right? let's say her customer acquisition cost was about $300, right? Which would actually be pretty good there. And then which ultimately equates to about 72K per year. So now let's go post, like year two, steady state. If we can increase the ARPU, so the average revenue per user, from 3K to 4,300, 4,356, right? If we can get our MRR to about 2,800 per month, right? Because we created this continuity program on the back end that was about $150, $200 a month, and we're continuing to fill that, right? We can move our customer acquisition cost up to about $700, right? So now we can spend a lot more, right? We can spend a lot more to acquire a customer because our lifetime value of that person has gone up, right? And there's a lot of people that say this, and I believe it to be true. The people that can spend the most are going to win, right? Because they're going to be able to garner enough attention. They're going to be able to get their offer in front of more eyeballs, and that will ultimately give them more opportunities at new clients, right? And this ultimately takes our business from 72K per year to about 105 a year on the same exact 24 client pipeline. So we use 24 clients across all of this. And if we can add in this MRR, this continuity model, we can add almost 50% to someone's business, right? Without a whole lot of extra work. You're doing a ton of work to acquire a customer. Let's figure out how to keep them longer, right? Increase that LTV. So hopefully that gives you a good idea on how you can start attacking this stuff. If you don't have the core offer dialed in, that's where you start. Start with that piece. Once we have that piece done, then let's look at the graduation moment and what comes next. There are some people, I mention this dude a lot, Jared, they're continuing to build their core offer. So their core offer is getting longer and longer and longer and longer and longer because they're so dialed in on their kind of perfect client that they're kind of building it with the client. So it's continuing to go along. My guess is at some point they'll hit an endpoint where they're seeing a lot of people graduating, and then they might create a continuity piece after that. But they can just keep going with their main offer. So we start with the main offer, and then we build this continuity afterwards. And remember, every main offer is going to have a graduation, and we want to make sure that we're designing that graduation and having that conversation about what's next rather than graduation day just showing up and then the client kind of disappearing right into the ether. So hopefully that's helpful. Hopefully that helps you think about this thing, because our goal here at Build the CEO is to help you build a real business, and implementing this concept after your main offer can help you build a real business. You're already a great coach. You're listening to this because you're a great coach. Now let's build you a real business. My name is Trevor. I'm the CEO of Coach Catalyst, and I'll see you here next week. Have a great one.